I do believe that Drinkwitz and his staff and the guys that we got there, and I'm going to, call out Brady Cook first and foremost. I mean, I believe he is a great leader, somebody that the rest of the team looks up to. He's a hard worker. I mean, he's kind of the epitome of everything we want as a Mizzou quarterback, to kind of lead those guys. And he's had his ups and downs, and he's battling some injury right now, unfortunately, but it's a team that still has a lot ahead of them to be able to prove. So everything's still on the table for them.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who, your podcast for Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Maggie Johnson, but we've got a very special guest joining us today. Super excited to have this guy on the podcast. We've been trying to nail him down for a while. We finally got him down. Chase Coffman, 2008 Mackey Award winner, consensus All-American 2008, Ray-Pec grad, folks from Kansas City, from the area, third-round draft pick. Chase, welcome on.
Thanks for having me. Always good to talk about Mizzou and see my fellow Mizzou people.
Well, first off, welcome to the show, because I have also, every time we're like trying to think of a guest, I'm like, can Chase Coffman come on? I'm like, I've never met Chase Coffman. I'm like, how cool would that be? Because we were talking a little bit before the show. I was at Mizzou at the same time you were at Mizzou, so it was like the golden ages, as I like to call it. Like we just, go into Furrow every Saturday. You were just getting to see like such good football. So I feel blessed that I was at Mizzou during that time. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
That makes two of us, both blessed.
Well, that kind of I guess that kind of brings me to my first question a little bit. We talked to T. Rucker a few weeks ago about his decision to come to Mizzou, obviously also from the KC, a little bit north area, had ties to Nebraska. You had ties to K-State, and you chose to come to Mizzou. Can you tell everybody kind of what your thought process was on that and why Mizzou was the perfect fit for you?
That was a really tough process for a 17, 18-year-old young man. That was the biggest decision probably to date in my life. And there was a lot of prayer involved. I actually wrote a English paper in one of my high school English classes about all the pros and cons of the four schools that I had whittled it down to. It was Nebraska, Iowa, K-State, and Mizzou, and it kind of boiled down to K-State and Mizzou. My parents both went to K-State, and I remember Mizzou getting a ton of heat in the media, the Kansas City media especially, at that time that I was getting recruited. They'd had a pretty good season where they made a bowl game, and then they had a good team but a bad season where they missed a bowl game my senior year of college. And, Mizzou, Coach Pinkel was taking, again, a lot of heat in the Kansas City media. And so to pick them, they were going to a spread offense as a wide receiver in high school. Andy Hill was the Kansas City area recruiter. Bruce Walker, he was the tight ends coach, and he would be hitting me up occasionally. And it just felt like the right place. Again, there's a lot of prayer involved, and I feel like it was a gut feeling. Felt like the right fit. There was a lot of guys in the Kansas City area at the time that were in that same recruiting class that were also going to Mizzou. And so some familiarity and praise the Lord, it turned out to be a pretty good time there. Like we were talking about, Maggie.
I think it did. I think it worked out pretty all right. You mentioned Andy Hill, kind of a small world thing. Andy Hill from Trenton, Missouri. I'm sure he lets you know every time he can let you know. That's where I graduated high school from as well. So good friends with Andy Hill and everything that he's got going on there. Now it's the Kansas City Chiefs, so to see him have that opportunity with the Chiefs is really cool, to just stay around the area and be able to be with the Chiefs and do stuff that they have there. But crazy small world when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, Trenton, Missouri. He let you know, and you mentioned Martin Rucker. I mean, he's going to let you know St. Joe Mo every time too.
Southside Ruck.
Yeah.
Had some pretty good tight ends at the University of Missouri. You did talk about T-Rock yourself as well. Mackey Award winner. That's the best tight end in the country right there. Just talk about that 2008 season, because you had a really good year, 10 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards. What was that like? I very basic kind of softball question. What was that season like for you? Kind of looking back now where you are, just like, what was that?
It was kind of going into that season. There was a lot of thought about, we just came off number 1 in the country. Ended up, it was number 4 in the country in the final polls after the bowl game and everything. And I'd had a pretty good 3 years up to that point, and there was some thought about, do I leave Mizzou early and go in the draft? And ultimately decided to stay. I loved what we had going. I had one of my ankles cleaned up for bone spurs that off season, which I didn't really want to go through, like the whole pre-draft process, needing to clean something like that up or go through injury. And obviously big expectations going into that 2008 season. And I think we ended up losing 4 games total, which was like a huge letdown. And I feel like that's like the team aspect of things. Like, man, we could have done a lot better than that. There's a couple games that we let get away. There's a couple games that were just really tough, but it was a lot of fun. I think one of the biggest things that I always think back to through my college career was just the guys that I got to spend a lot of the time with, go through the process with, play with, work out with, do the winter conditioning where you're up at, whatever time in the morning, going through the toughest stuff, getting ready for the season, the summers, and even driving down to the Lake of the Ozarks with a couple of the guys, stuff like that. And, the season, you talk about Mackey Award winner, All-American, stuff like that. It was a really, really awesome time to kind of get to shine without Rucker being there. I loved playing alongside of him. It's more fun to win and do things together and kind of compete and have a guy like that in the same tight end room. That last season was just like, hey, let's give it all you got, and ended up having a pretty good year. And then the accolades, praise the Lord, they followed, but ended up actually breaking my foot in our bowl game, the very last offensive play in overtime of the bowl game. So like I had said previously, there's some cleanup stuff in one of my ankles that I need to do before, if I were to leave my junior year. I didn't want to go through that process of being injured going into the draft, and that ended up being the case. Of course.
Yeah. It's also kind of crazy, like you mentioned, like you getting to shine with T-Record not there.
Yeah.
But people forget that you shined like you did with people like Jeremy Macklin on the field.
Yeah, a lot of talent.
Who had over 1,200 yards receiving, which is amazing. I think, some people, like, they think of the names, but they just don't realize that the times overlap.
Yeah.
So, like, crazy props to all that.
I think I'm probably everybody on offense and a lot of guys on the defense either made it to the NFL or had a shot, at least for like some workouts or combine stuff. So I had a very, very talented group across the board.
My best friend, her sister's married to Tyler Llewellyn. So, we get to go back and talk about that stuff all the time, which is, it's always fun with him too. Going back to you kind of already made the comment about 2008 and going into it, coming off that hyped year and how it just didn't kind of turn out the way that you wanted it. I feel like there's a lot of similarities right now to this 2024 team. And, they only have 2 losses now, but, there's some injuries going on and all of that. What kind of things do you think are going on in the locker room to try to keep these guys motivated, keep pushing them? Because making it, say they win out, they could win 10 games still. That's still, they could win 10 games with the bowl game too, but that's still a great season at the University of Missouri.
Yeah, it's hard to win 10 games, whoever you are. So, especially in the SEC, and not that we don't have. Comparatively, less tough teams than some of the ones we've already played. But there's a lot of good. I don't want to compare it completely to the NFL where you got to show up every single week, but you still got to show up every single week. We have a full slate of SEC games ahead of us, some tough teams with some injuries. There's a lot of it that has to do with culture, starting, kind of with the coaches, with the staff, with everybody else. And then when teams really have that, you have to prove it moment, that's when that locker room leadership steps up, because ultimately it's the guys in the locker room that are out there together on the field. And you're the ones that are fighting for your brothers that are going to say, you know what, I'm injured and I'm going to keep going through this. Or, as we see sometimes in the NFL, even, it's, you know what, it's a lost season, it's a lost cause, and I'm just going to take care of myself. With NIL and the transfer portal, that is even bigger now than it has been in the past, unfortunately. But I do believe that Drinkwitz and his staff and the guys that we got there, and I'm going to call out Brady Cook first and foremost. I mean, I believe he is a great leader, somebody that the rest of the team looks up to. He's a hard worker. I mean, he's kind of the epitome of everything we want as a Mizzou quarterback, to kind of lead those guys. And he's had his ups and downs, and he's battling some injury right now, unfortunately, but it's a team that still has a lot ahead of them to be able to prove. So everything's still on the table for them.
Yeah, I think this Missouri team, you brought up the NIL and how that kind of impacts how players and coaches coach and play. Now, how do you think it would have impacted your college career? You think about maybe the year that you were talking about, your junior year, wanting to come out. How do you think NIL would have impacted how you would have approached your career at Missouri?
That's a crazy question. The first thing that I think of is, does that team with, you guys mentioned it earlier, we talked about it a little bit, does that team stick together with all the talent that we have? I think for sure, after a Heisman contention season, surely you keep Chase Daniel and retain him at Mizzou. That's your first priority, no matter how much money it takes. Secondly, Jeremy Macklin, Denario Alexander, Jared Perry, myself, Tommy Saunders, Derek Washington, Tom Temple. Again, across the board, and that's just offense, not even naming the defensive guys.
Yeah. So
how do you keep all that together and manage, all those young men coming off a season like you did? And I for sure would have come out with a little bit more money in my pocket, but would I have been a better young man for it? I don't know. I believe so, and I hope so. But money does crazy things to people.
Sure, it's always one of those Pandora's box things, right? When you talk about those I always love the interesting question about the NIL and like how former players think of it too, because there are some former players that maybe could have made a little bit more money because they didn't go to the league, right? Or they didn't stick around in the league, that could have like really benefited from NIL. So I'm always really interested about like what guys around your time when they were playing college football, what they think of NIL.
Yeah, and I will say this, at the time, and I was a young man, so maybe I guess boys mature later than women. I don't know if it's like age 24, 28, 26, something like that. So
40,
after college, 40. After college. I will say this. To make that decision as a young man is a tough decision. It takes a lot of wisdom and discernment, and who's around you, kind of talking in your ear, giving you that advice, helping you make those decisions. That's a big part of it. And, I say that to say that, I signed up for what I signed up for, knowing what I signed up for, that it wasn't NIL, that I was just, you got the video game playing in the background. I was just happy to not have to make myself on NCAA, 2000, whatever. They used my name, image, and likeness. And, guys in my era are now suing schools, suing, NCAA, suing different program, whatever, because of that. And I've thought about that and just the implications of that and how that affects their status, our status as former players, and believing that we deserve something in that atmosphere. And I don't know that it's right or wrong. It's just an interesting topic to broach.
The weird thing about NIL to me is that I feel like when they originally talked about NIL and they were like, name, image, and likeness, all I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, jersey sales. Oh yeah, t-shirts. I didn't think of the entire world that came along with it, like appearances and everything like that. And I'm just like, oh yeah, he should get money for if I wear his jersey. So like you said, it's also, it's kind of crazy. I understand it with some players. Like I would understand it with maybe the Ohio State players that got in trouble for doing that. But like you said, I think a lot of people from like our era when we were there, you just loved playing football and you just like loved where you were. So I think things have just changed there because the mindset has just changed.
Yeah, and I do believe there's a lot of these athletes that they still love the game. They still want to be developed as young men and women, and know that life after sports is the biggest thing. But the opportunity to make the money while you have that opportunity is really big. And we all know that there's a lot of high level, high talented athletes that get recruited every single year and don't make it in their respective sport to the professional level because of injuries, because of being at the wrong place at the wrong time, because of just a system that maybe doesn't fit them. So I think there's very few people that have just the God-given athletic ability to get past some naturally, whatever, the offense, the defense, the whatever they're just thrown into. And I would say Cam Newton's probably one of those people. I don't have that athletic ability.
Well, I think a lot of your fans would probably disagree.
Thank you, fans.
There you go. Well, look, Missouri's got a big game coming up against Oklahoma. Missouri is kind of renewing that rivalry with Oklahoma. I'm super excited to talk to you about that here. Coming up after this break, but first, before we get to the break, gotta give a shout out to Home Field Apparel. I'm rocking a new Fighting Tiger shirt over here at Home Field Apparel. Maggie rocking the crew neck, looking good there from the folks at Home Field Apparel. You can use that code Mizzou24 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Go check them out if you love Mizzou, or really if you just want any other college. Look, it's gift giving season. We're getting close to the time where we're going to need to start shopping for those other fans in your life. Home Field has you covered. HomeFieldApparel.com, Mizzou24 at checkout for 15% off your first order. We're going to take a break. We'll talk more Mizzou with Chase Coffman coming up right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a wireless provider that's straight up with no BS, no complicated bills, fees, or upcharges? Well, with Mint Mobile, you can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And if you're worried about losing your phone or phone number or contacts, with Mint Mobile you can bring all of that over to join Mint Mobile's plan. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and a new 3-month wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Welcome back into Mizzou. That's who Tucker Franklin, Maggie Johnson hanging out with Chase Coffman. 2023 SEC legend, Chase Coffman, by the way. Chase, is it weird that you're an SEC legend? Do you think that's weird that you never played in the conference, but the conference says you're an SEC legend?
Yeah, it is interesting, but it's about the history of the schools that are in the SEC now. And
fair.
Again, it's a blessing to be a big part of Mizzou's history and be remembered and honored in that capacity.
It is really cool. Chase Daniel was just announced as the 2024 recipient for the Missouri class in the SEC Legends. I saw that your name was already on there. They threw you up there before Chase. How does that feel? How's that feel? You get up there before the Heisman class.
Yeah, I know. Again, like I said, it's an honor, and it just so happened that he was finally available this year after official retirement, and wanting, I guess, the Chases to fall right in there, Chase and Chase together. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, elite connection.
Tucker actually took my question, so cool, Tucker, because I was gonna talk about that too, and I wanted to know if it was weird, but I kind of want to hear like what the process kind of looks like, because obviously you go down to like the SEC championship game, I assume, and you get to like hang out with all those people. But what was it like? Because I mean, obviously you guys are legends to us, but some of these players like go way back. Some of these guys are, from the 80s and 90s of this like hard hitting, like badass football teams that won natties and stuff. So what was the process like? Who was even the coolest person you met?
Yeah, so it was a really neat, and like I said, again, an honoring process for Mizzou to ask me to be able to do that. And, the SEC, they kind of set it all up. They fly you and a +1 down, and my wife and I felt like it was a pretty neat opportunity to bring our kids. So last year they would have been 9, 8, and 4. And we felt like that was something that they could remember and be a part of. And it turns out that Atlanta is, we lived there for a little bit. We already knew it was busy, but surrounding the SEC championship weekend is even busier. And, with things that I'm kind of involved with that whole SEC Legends weekend, my wife is a superstar for kind of taking the reins on making sure that our kids stayed close by and didn't get lost. But it was really neat. There was a couple guys that in the same draft class as myself, and a couple guys that I actually played with in the NFL at some of my different stops. So I would say that made it even that much more special. One of the guys, Andre Smith, he was a offensive tackle at Alabama. We were in the same draft class. He was the first round pick to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I was in the 3rd round, so knew Andre pretty well. Know Sean Moreno from Georgia. Again, kind of went through some of that All-American stuff, draft process stuff with him. Let's see who else. Reggie Kelly, he was a tight end from Mississippi State and was actually like a 10-year vet when I got to the Bengals. So he was kind of somebody that took me under his wing when I got to Cincinnati and, really encouraged me and stayed on me on just doing the right things. And not that I didn't have a lot of other people around me doing that, but Reggie was right there in the trenches, in the tight end room with me kind of every day. And the ups and downs that some people may have seen on Hard Knocks, he was there encouraging me through those. So awesome to go in with him. Wesley Woodyard, who was a Kentucky linebacker, played with him at the Tennessee Titans. So got to see him and his wife down there. Let's see who else was down there. There's Patrick Willis. Just went into the Hall of Fame. Amazing guy. Got to play against him at Mizzou. We played Ole Miss a couple times, and
that's right, yeah.
Played against his 49ers teams. Yeah, beat him. But he was a dang good player, and his Hall of Fame induction. He went in this year. What an amazing guy. I got to meet him and spend a little bit more time around him, as well as a few of the other guys down there. And even then, like some of the guys my dad kind of knew from, his past playing days, or, guys that had coached or played against or whatever when he was playing. So really neat. They did a great job. And, again, it was an honor for me and my family to get to experience that.
That's awesome. I did think it was weird that, you guys who played the Big 12 were honored, but now that you said that, I feel bad for saying that I felt weird about it. So now,
yeah, a lot of people have brought that up, and again, I didn't play in the SEC, and there was a little luncheon that we had that everybody kind of went around and said, when you played and where you played, and it was like, yeah, hey, like you guys all know that my tenure playing in college football was in the Big 12. I did get to play against some SEC schools, and I said at the luncheon, I will brag that I was undefeated against SEC schools in playing career. So I don't know how many people there could say that for themselves, but it was an honor, and just to represent the University of Missouri in that capacity was pretty neat.
That's awesome. In the Big 12, had some pretty distinguished rivalries, right? As we mentioned earlier, Missouri plays OU coming up after the bye week. But a big rivalry that, for a while, has been on the radar of Missouri fans of this game. November 9th has been circled on the calendar for a long time. There's been some epic matchups, Chase. I mean, I just want to know like some of your favorite memories against. I'm sure you have so many memories and stories against like just playing against Oklahoma. I just want to know some of your favorite ones.
I don't have any favorite memories.
Yeah, I was like 2007. There's no good memories.
Well,
we made some good plays against them, but we never got the win, and that stung. We got to play them in a couple of Big 12 championship games, and again, unfortunately, weren't able to pull out the victories. I know we've had some success against them since I was done playing, and that was amazing to see, and especially as of late. That has kind of, that spark has kind of renewed with them joining the SEC, with us being able to pull some people away from OU and coming to Missouri, which is big, and just to continue being competitive. I mean, that's even a thing because, again, kind of back to my career versus OU. I mean, man, it sucked not ever getting those wins. And I don't want to ever be that person that says like, hey, this is a rivalry, but they win every time. Like, that's not a rivalry. Hopefully, we, as we go forward, Mizzou can continue growing in the capacity that we have been, continue to be competitive, continue to bring in some of the top recruits in the country and win games against the OUs of the world that do have national champions, that do have Heisman winners. I think that's something that is in their past, and they have to prove that going forward. But, we have the chance to do the same.
What do you think?
It starts November 9th.
Yeah, it starts November 9th. What do you think about that addition of OU and Texas to the SEC?
I think it kind of affirms the SEC, the SEC motto. It just means more. So it's kind of crazy what the whole landscape of college sports is right now. And to add two universities, Texas and Oklahoma, I mean, they're very historied franchises, programs that, again, do have that, have championships, Heisman winners, all the things that are kind of like you show off when you show off recruits to the conference. It's going to be tough to get into the college football playoff. It's going to be tough, but if you can make it through that gauntlet, then, you've proved that you're one of the best teams in the country. And to add them there and at that opportunity to play against teams like that, not every team in the country has the capacity to say we're worthy of playing in the college, playing for championships. And if you're in the SEC playing against teams that are really the best, that's who you want to play with to prove yourself.
Yeah, I think that just solidifies the conference even more. I think it actually moves us closer to like a just one big super league, right? And it feels like we're really close to just having one big league of just the Big Ten and the SEC. And look, it's good that Missouri made that move when they did to the SEC.
I completely agree. I wish the old Big 12 would have stayed together, but where does that leave us? Who knows? That's just like saying, Chase, what would it have been like if you would have got NIL money? So that's where we are, and we can keep going forward and just control what we can control. And again, I think Mizzou is doing that. I really like Laird Veach coming in as the athletic director, Moon Choi as the president. Great people. They got Drinkwitz obviously doing great things, and hopefully continuing to grow on that. They got a great staff, a lot of good player leadership. Hopefully we can continue to attract the top people in the country. And that's just football. We got a basketball program that's hopefully going to make a rebound back this year as well. Baseball, I went down, sorry to cut you off, Maggie. I went down to a homecoming baseball golf tournament that was, with some people that I knew, and they invited even the baseball guys around there.
There you
go. So I kind of have just like one last question. I didn't want to spill the beans if he was coming on the show this week, so we could surprise people. But I did tell one person, and he gave me a question to ask you, so I was going to ask. It's nothing crazy. Who are your top 3 favorite college football tight ends that like either it can be since you were there, before, that you looked up to while you were at Mizzou? Just your top 3 names.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, Martin Rucker. I got to put him in the top 3.
Now.
Oh yeah.
Well, an amazing an amazing guy. He was kind of my big brother, as if you will, coming into Mizzou, and he had already started and played and had a really good freshman year, even without me being there. And then to continue to grow and push each other and learn from each other, and even still stay connected. There's a lot that surpasses just that college football, and being an All-American, Mizzou guy, stayed home. What a great guy. So Martin Rucker, I think Kellen Winslow Jr. He was at the, and I'll say I spent just a small time with him in Tampa Bay. I don't really know him. He's had an iffy life after sports, but as a college football player, amazing. One of the most talented college football players that I've, and in a time when I was kind of engaged in watching college football, the U was huge.
Oh yeah.
And so a really, really explosive and fun guy to watch. Great college football player. And then Tony Gonzalez, basketball and football in college. Yeah. And obviously that's not college football player, but, he was somebody that I modeled my game after. Had a great career in college, came out early, played basketball. And I think they made it to, I want to say, the Final Four when he was there at Cal. I was, a 2-time rec league champ at Mizzou. So I kind of did the football basketball thing.
Not easy to win those rec leagues.
I have heard stories. Look, I know that. So, people who listen to this podcast might know that we used to have a podcast with Martin Rucker and Tommy Saunders. Yeah. And Tommy Saunders is still to this day very heated when it comes to those basketball. You bring up those basketball games, you're like, "Oh, we beat you guys. We should have beat you." And he is into it. Like those, I know that those games were heated between you guys.
Yeah, the first year it was just me and Tommy as the only like Mizzou athletes on the team, and then a bunch of guys that he knew, and they're just regular students that spent time up at the rec center shooting and could drain threes and still play some good basketball, and we ended up winning. The next year we had a team that was all football players. Tommy was on there too, and we just I felt bad for some of the teams because we bullied them. I'm not gonna lie, we bullied them. But back to Tony Gonzalez, amazing guy. Modeled my game after him. Grew up here in the Kansas City area, obviously watching the Chiefs a lot, being the hometown team, getting to see him as a player, and then actually got to spend my seasons in Atlanta were his last 2 seasons in the NFL. So got to share a tight end room with him, learn and grow from him and get to know him a little bit, which was really neat. So there you go. Martin Rucker, Kellen Winslow Jr., and Tony Gonzalez.
It's a good list.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's so many to pick from. So for you to be able to spew them off, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And I would say even, what criteria are you looking for to kind of pick that? And we don't have that criteria, but just 3 that come to mind that are, influential.
Look, Missouri had some, it was tight into you for a little bit. They were Iowa before Iowa, pretty much, before Iowa started pumping all those guys out. Tight end.
Iowa had some pretty good. Dallas Clark was, he was on the verge of being on my top 3. Dallas Clark was a really good player. And I believe he was like a walk-on linebacker at Iowa. Ended up, leaving early and being, arguably a Hall of Fame tight end.
Wild. They find them everywhere at Iowa.
Yeah.
They find them walking around the cornfields. Like, oh, come play tight end. And then they end up being a really good tight end. But
I know about that. They've had some studs come out, especially over the last 10 years.
Yeah. It's been really impressive.
Yeah.
Well, Chase, I think that's all I got for you. I appreciate you hopping on finally, getting you on the Mizzou That's Who podcast. Super excited that we were able to wrangle you down, wrestle you down for a quick little podcast.
Thank you for asking, and it's a pleasure to join you guys.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who. We'll be back next week to preview the OU game. Big game coming up for Missouri on November 9th. We will have more coming up shortly. So make sure you stay tuned. You're locked into our YouTube. Hit the like and subscribe. Also, subscribe to the podcast feed. Give us a 5-star rating and review. Those really help us out. Be a friend, tell a friend, as Pat McAfee says about the Mizzou That's Who podcast. So for Maggie Johnson, I'm Tucker Franklin, and for Chase Coffman, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who.